The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people had looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They built telescopes and satellites. They sent probes into the darkness. They dreamed of the day when they would finally meet others who shared the universe with them. That day came in the year 2347. The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Every radio telescope on Earth picked up the signal at the same moment. It was not random noise or a natural phenomenon. It was a greeting, translated into every human language simultaneously. The Galactic Collective, a federation of intelligent species that had governed the Milky Way for nearly 1,000,000 years, was inviting humanity to join their ranks. The world celebrated. People danced in the streets. Scientists wept with joy. After centuries of wondering, humanity finally had proof that they were not alone. They prepared their finest diplomats, their brightest minds, and their most impressive ships. This was the moment they had been waiting for since the first human looked up at the stars and asked the question that had haunted their species forever. Ambassador Daniel Price was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent his entire life working toward peace. He had ended wars on Earth and brought together nations that had been enemies for generations. Everyone agreed that he was the perfect person to represent humanity to the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Monroe commanded the fleet that would carry the diplomatic team to their destination. She was a career military officer, but she had never fired a shot in anger. The Terran Federation had been at peace for over 200 years. Her ships were built for exploration, not war. She believed that this mission would be the beginning of a new golden age for her species. The journey took 3 months. When they arrived at the Collective's capital station, Daniel Price felt his breath catch in his throat. The structure was larger than anything humanity had ever built. It stretched across space like a city made of light and metal. Thousands of ships from hundreds of different species moved around. It like fish swimming through a vast ocean. The humans were escorted to a grand chamber where representatives from the Collective's ruling council waited to receive them. Daniel Price had prepared for this moment his entire life. He walked forward with confidence, ready to shake hands with beings from across the galaxy. The Valorians were the first to speak. They were the oldest and most powerful species in the Collective. Their bodies were made of living crystal that shifted and changed color as they moved. They towered over the humans, standing nearly 3 meters tall. Their voices echoed through the chamber like music. The High Chancellor of the Valorians examined Daniel Price the way a person might examine an insect. There was no hostility in his gaze, only a complete lack of interest. To him, humanity was just another primitive species that had stumbled into the stars. He had seen thousands like them come and go over his long existence. "You are the humans," the Chancellor said. "It was not a question. We have studied your world. Your history is filled with violence and destruction. You kill each other over territory, resources, and ideas. You have nearly destroyed your own planet several times. You are young, weak, and dangerous to yourselves." Daniel Price nodded slowly. He could not deny any of these things. Humanity's history was indeed violent. They had fought countless wars. They had created weapons capable of ending all life on Earth. But they had also learned from their mistakes. They had grown beyond their worst impulses. "Everything you say is true," Daniel replied. "But we have changed. We have not had a major war in over 200 years. We have healed our planet. We have learned to live together in peace. We come here today hoping to extend that peace to the rest of the galaxy." The chamber filled with sounds that the translator could not properly interpret. It took Daniel a moment to realize that the assembled aliens were laughing at him. "You misunderstand your position," the Chancellor said when the noise died down. "You have not been invited here to negotiate. The collective does not treat with lesser species. You have been invited to receive your instructions. He waved one crystalline appendage, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed a small section of space, barely a fraction of a percent of the galaxy. This is the territory you will be permitted to occupy. You will not expand beyond these borders. You will provide labor and resources to the more advanced civilizations as required. You will not develop weapons beyond what is needed for basic defense. In return, you will be allowed to exist under the protection of the collective. Admiral Lisa Monroe stepped forward, her face carefully controlled. And if we refuse these terms? The Chancellor turned his attention to her. For a moment, something like curiosity flickered in his crystalline form. Refuse? No species refuses. The alternative to acceptance is extinction. This is how the galaxy has functioned for 1,000,000 years. This is how it will continue to function long after your species has been forgotten. Daniel Price took a deep breath. He had hoped this meeting would go differently. He had dreamed of a partnership between humanity and the stars. But he was a realist. He knew when he was facing a wall that could not be moved through diplomacy alone. "I must give you a warning," he said quietly. The Chancellor tilted his massive head. "A warning? How amusing. What could you possibly warn us about?" "Humanity has worked very hard to become what we are today," Daniel said. "We have buried our worst instincts deep within ourselves. We have built a civilization designed to keep our darker nature contained. We choose peace every single day. Not because we are weak, but because we know what we are capable of when we stop choosing it." He paused, making sure every being in the chamber was listening. "Don't make us angry," he said. "We are asking you, as sincerely as we can, to treat us with basic respect and fairness. Not because we will destroy you if you don't, but because we genuinely do not want to become what we used to be. We like who we are now. We don't want to change." The Chancellor's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. "Your species truly is entertaining. Very well, little human. Your warning has been noted. Now accept our terms and be grateful that we allow you to exist at all." Daniel Price looked at Lisa Monroe. She gave him a small nod. They both understood what was happening. They also both understood that this was not a battle they could win today. "We will take your terms back to our government," Daniel said. "They will make the final decision." As the humans turned to leave, the Chancellor called out one final time. "Remember, little species, the collective has existed for 1,000,000 years. We have crushed thousands of civilizations that defied us. You are nothing special. You are nothing new. And you are nothing to fear." Daniel Price did not respond. He simply walked out of the chamber with his head held high, already knowing that this was not the end of the story, that it was only the beginning. The war did not begin with weapons or ships. It began with words. Every communication device in the Krethian Empire activated at the same moment. Screens in homes, on ships, in government buildings all showed the same image. Admiral Nathan Cole looked out from every display, his face calm and his voice steady. "You took our children," he said. "You tore apart our families. You sold our people like livestock across the galaxy. I am here to tell you that this ends now." He paused to let the translation systems catch up. He wanted every Krethian to understand exactly what he was saying. "Every human being currently held as a slave within your borders will be returned to us within 30 days. Every single one. If they are not, your empire will cease to exist. This is not a threat. This is not a negotiation. This is a simple statement of what will happen." The transmission ended. Across the Krethian Empire, military commanders laughed at the audacity of these strange, soft creatures. Who did the humans think they were? The Krethians had 10,000 warships. They had conquered dozens of species. They had been warriors for longer than humanity had existed. The High Warlord of the Krethian Empire ordered his entire fleet to assemble at Nexus Prime, a strategic point on the border between their space and human territory. He would crush this human threat personally and add their species to his list of conquests. 10,000 Krethian warships gathered in perfect formation. They were magnificent vessels, designed for battle by a species that had known nothing but war for millions of years. Their weapons could crack moons. Their armor could withstand nuclear strikes. Each ship carried thousands of soldiers, eager to prove themselves in combat. The human fleet appeared without warning. There were only 500 vessels, tiny compared to the Krethian armada. The Krethians could barely believe what they were seeing. These fools had come to die. The battle began. It lasted 4 hours. Lieutenant Commander Eric Turner piloted one of the assault frigates in the vanguard. His ship danced through enemy fire like it was moving through water. The Krethian weapons were powerful, but they were designed to hit targets that moved in predictable patterns. Human ships did not move in predictable patterns. They changed direction constantly, accelerating and decelerating in ways that seemed impossible. Commander Sarah Boyd led the bomber wing that struck at the Krethian flagship. Her pilots flew straight into the heart of the enemy formation, releasing weapons that punched through the strongest armor the Krethians had ever developed. The flagship exploded, taking the High Warlord with it. When the battle ended, the Krethian fleet was gone. 10,000 ships reduced to debris. Millions of soldiers dead. Human losses stood at 17 vessels and 243 personnel. The human commanders held funerals for their fallen. They spoke names and shared memories. They mourned every single life they had lost. The Krethians could not even identify their dead. There was not enough left of their fleet to tell one ship from another. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Captain Lara Bennett and her psychological warfare team made sure of it. They broadcast footage of the destruction to every species in the collective. They showed the mighty Krethian armada being torn apart in hours. They let the galaxy see what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The ground assault came next. Human soldiers descended on Krethian worlds like a storm. They were not there to conquer or occupy. They had one mission: rescue every human being held in slavery. Lieutenant Peter Grant led the force that hit the slave markets of Krithos. 3. His soldiers moved through the city with terrible efficiency. They had studied every building, every street, every hiding place. They knew where the human slaves were kept. They knew exactly how to reach them. The Krethian guards fought back. They were formidable warriors, stronger and faster than any human. It did not matter. Human soldiers wore powered armor that multiplied their strength tenfold. They carried weapons that could kill with a single shot. They had trained for years for this exact moment. Peter Grant personally carried a 7-year-old girl out of a labor facility. She had been taken from her parents 4 years earlier. She did not remember their faces. She did not remember her home. All she knew was darkness and work and pain. When she looked up at the human soldier who held her, she started to cry. "You're safe now," he told her. "We're taking you home." Across the Krethian Empire, the same scene repeated itself. Human soldiers found their people in mines, factories, farms, and worse places. They freed them all. They documented every crime, every cruelty, every horror that the Krethians had inflicted. And they made sure the galaxy knew. The children were returned to their families within 22 days, 8 days ahead of schedule. Then humanity turned its attention to the Valorians. The eldest race of the galaxy had watched the destruction of the Krethian Empire with growing concern. They had existed for millions of years. They had seen younger species rise and fall countless times. But they had never seen anything like this. Admiral Cole's fleet arrived in the Valorian home system without warning. The crystalline beings had defenses that had protected them for eons. Ancient weapons platforms surrounded their world. Battle fleets from a dozen allied species had gathered to protect them. It was not enough. Commander Megan Ford led the strike force that broke through the outer defenses. Her ships moved so fast that the Valorian targeting systems could not track them. They hit the weapons platforms and reduced them to floating rubble. Captain Andrew Harris commanded the Marines who landed on the Valorian homeworld. They faced creatures of living crystal who had been ancient when humanity's ancestors were learning to walk upright. They faced weapons that had destroyed civilizations. They did not stop. They did not retreat. They pushed forward with a fury that the Valorians had never encountered. Dr. Nicole Green was a civilian scientist who had lost her brother at Horizon's Edge. She had volunteered for the mission, despite having no military training. She had spent years working on a very special project. Now she stood at a console deep within a human ship, her finger hovering over a button. Targets confirmed, the tactical officer reported. The device is ready. Nicole thought about her brother. He had been an artist who painted pictures of alien worlds. He had never hurt anyone in his life. The Valorians had killed him for the crime of existing in a place they did not want him to be. She pressed a button. The Valorian homeworld cracked. Great fissures opened across its surface. Cities that had stood for millions of years collapsed into the depths. The crystalline beings screamed as their world died around them. It was not complete destruction. Humanity was not trying to commit genocide. They were sending a message. And the message was received. The Valorian High Chancellor fled aboard his personal vessel. His empire, built over 1,000,000 years of careful planning and ruthless conquest, crumbled in less than one. His allies abandoned him. His subjects surrendered. Everything he had built was gone. Admiral Nathan Cole broadcast one final message to the galaxy. His face was tired. His eyes held no joy. There was no celebration in his voice. "This is what happens," he said simply. "Remember it. The reckoning was complete. But the war was not over yet." 50 years passed after that first meeting with the Galactic Collective. 50 years of humanity trying everything they could think of to change their situation. They sent diplomats to every species that would meet with them. They offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and scientific partnerships. They shared their music, their art, and their stories. They asked for nothing except to be treated as equals. Every single attempt failed. The collective viewed humanity the same way a person might view ants building a hill in their backyard. Sometimes interesting to watch, but ultimately beneath notice. The older species had their own concerns, their own politics, and their own wars. Humanity was simply too young and too weak to matter. Commander Kevin Shaw served on the exploration vessel Endurance during those years. His job was to map the borders of human space and make contact with any alien species willing to talk. He kept detailed records of everything he saw. His reports painted a picture of a galaxy that was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The Krethian Empire controlled a vast section of space near the human border. They were insectoid creatures, standing on 6 legs with sharp claws and armor shells. Their society was built on strength and dominance. The weak served the strong. That was their only law. The Krethians discovered that humans made excellent slaves. They were intelligent enough to learn complex tasks, but physically weak enough to control easily. The first raids on human colonies began in the 20th year after first contact. Kevin Shaw was one of the first to respond to a distress call from a border settlement called Green Valley. When his ship arrived, he found only smoking ruins. The colony's 2,000 residents were gone. Later intelligence confirmed they had been taken by Krethian slavers and sold across a dozen different star systems. He filed a report with the Terran Federation. The Federation filed a formal protest with the Galactic Collective. The collective responded that humanity had not yet earned protection under galactic law. If they wanted their people back, they would have to negotiate with the Krethians directly. The Krethians refused to negotiate. Why would they? Humans were profitable merchandise. Their slaves were in high demand, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. Dr. Patricia Cole was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She had dedicated her career to understanding the biology and culture of other species. She believed that knowledge was the path to peace. If humans could understand their neighbors, perhaps they could find common ground. She was stationed on a colony world called New Providence when the Krethians came. The attack happened at dawn. Ships descended from the sky like falling stars. Soldiers poured out and began rounding up civilians. Patricia watched from her laboratory window as families were torn apart. Parents screamed as their children were dragged away. The Krethians did not care about keeping families together. Children were sold to one buyer, adults to another. They would never see each other again. Patricia was captured along with 4,000 other colonists. She spent the next 3 years as a slave on a mining world, working 18 hours a day in darkness. She saw people she knew die from exhaustion, disease, and despair. She held on to hope that someone would come for them, that the Federation would find a way to bring them home. No one came. On Earth, the government debated what to do. Some leaders wanted to build a military and strike back against the Krethians. Others argued that this would only make things worse. The collective would never allow humanity to wage war. They would be crushed before they could fire a single shot. Admiral Christopher Blake was sent to the collective council to deliver yet another formal protest. He stood before the same crystalline Valorians who had dismissed Daniel Price half a century earlier. His voice shook with barely controlled anger as he described what was happening to human colonists. The council listened politely, then delivered their response. Humanity had been warned not to expand beyond their designated borders. The colonies that had been raided were located in disputed territory. The Krethians had every right to claim any resources they found there, including human resources. Christopher Blake returned to Earth with nothing. The debates continued. More colonies were raided. More people were taken. The government sent more protests, received more dismissals, and accomplished nothing. Then came Horizon's Edge. It was a small colony, home to 17,000 people. They were artists and scientists, musicians and writers. They had established their settlement just 3 light years beyond the human border, in a region that no other species had claimed. They wanted to create a place where creativity could flourish away from the politics of both Earth and the collective. The Valorians decided to make an example of them. A single Valorian warship appeared above Horizon's Edge on a clear summer morning. The colonists had no weapons capable of threatening it. They sent messages asking what was happening, pleading for explanation. The warship did not respond. At noon, it opened fire. The bombardment lasted less than a minute. When it was over, Horizon's Edge no longer existed. 17,000 men, women, and children were reduced to ash and memory. The Valorians broadcast a message to all human settlements. This was the price of defiance. This was what happened to those who forgot their place. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole received the news while standing on the bridge of Earth's newest ship, the Vanguard. His hands were steady as he read the casualty report. His face showed no emotion, but those who knew him could see something changing behind his eyes. His wife had been on Horizon's Edge. She was a painter who had dreamed of capturing alien sunsets on canvas. Their 2 daughters had been with her. Emma was 12 years old. Sophie was 9. They had sent him a video message just 3 days earlier, showing him the garden they were planting outside their new home. Nathan Cole stood in silence for a long time. His officers waited, unsure what to do or say. There were no words that could help. There was no comfort that could reach him. Finally, he spoke. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but something in his tone made everyone on the bridge feel cold. "Open a channel to all human vessels," he said, "and broadcast it on every frequency the collective monitors." The communications officer hesitated for just a moment, then did as ordered. Nathan Cole looked directly into the camera. When he spoke, his words were simple. There was no anger in his voice, no threat, no emotion at all. Just a statement of fact that would echo across the galaxy. "You were warned." He cut the transmission and turned to his executive officer. "Contact Earth. Tell them to begin Project Prometheus. Tell him the time for diplomacy has ended." The officer swallowed hard. "Sir, are you certain? Once we start down this path, there will be no turning back." Nathan Cole looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the ashes of his family drifted through the void. Somewhere out there, thousands of human slaves waited for rescue that had never come. Somewhere out there, ancient beings laughed at the thought of humanity fighting back. "I know," he said softly. "Send the message." The galaxy was about to discover what humanity had spent 200 years trying to forget. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They looked at humanity and saw a young species, barely a few thousand years old. They saw creatures who were physically weak, who lived short lives, who had no natural weapons or defenses. They saw a civilization that had been at peace for 2 centuries and assumed this meant humans had forgotten how to fight. They could not have been more wrong. Dr. Michelle Torres was one of Earth's leading historians. Before the war began, she had spent years living among the Valorians, studying their culture and trying to build bridges between their species. She had tried to explain humanity to them, to help them understand what they were dealing with. They had not listened. Humanity was not peaceful by nature. They were peaceful by choice. And there was an enormous difference between the two. For millions of years, humans had been hunters. They had chased down prey across endless grasslands. They had fought against predators with nothing but rocks and sticks. They had survived ice ages, droughts, and disasters that had wiped out countless other species. Every generation had faced challenges that should have destroyed them, and every generation had found a way to overcome. When humans developed intelligence, they turned their survival instincts toward each other. They formed tribes and nations. They invented weapons. They waged wars over territory, resources, religion, and ideas. Each conflict pushed them to create more effective ways of killing. The bow and arrow gave way to the gun. The gun gave way to the bomb. The bomb gave way to weapons that could crack planets. Humans had split the atom not to generate power, but to destroy cities. They had reached for the stars not from curiosity alone, but because their conflicts had grown too large for a single world to contain. Every great leap in human technology had been driven, at least in part, by the desire to defeat their enemies. Then something changed. Humanity looked at what they had become and felt horror. They saw the destruction they had caused, the lives they had ended, the potential they had wasted on killing each other. They made a collective decision to be different. They built systems designed to prevent war. They taught their children to resolve conflicts with words instead of weapons. They locked away their warrior instincts and tried to become something better. The peace that followed was real. It was not weakness or cowardice. It was the hardest thing humanity had ever done. Every day, they chose not to be what they used to be. Every generation taught the next that there were better ways to solve problems. They transformed themselves from a species of warriors into a species of explorers, artists, and scientists. But the capacity for violence never disappeared. It was buried deep, waiting in the darkness. Humanity had not eliminated their warrior nature. They had simply learned to control it. The Galactic Collective had just destroyed that control. Across human space, something stirred. The Terran Federation declared total war for the first time in 300 years. The words echoed through every human settlement, every ship, every station. People who had never held a weapon in their lives found themselves volunteering for military service. Scientists who had dedicated their careers to peaceful research turned their minds toward DESTRUCTION. Dr. Samuel Grant led the weapons development team. He was a physicist who had spent 20 years studying stellar phenomena. He understood how stars worked better than almost anyone alive. Now he applied that knowledge to a single question. How could humanity use the stars themselves as weapons? The answer was the Cascade device. It was a machine that could destabilize a star's core, causing it to go supernova. With this weapon, humanity could destroy entire solar systems. They could wipe out civilizations that had existed for millions of years. They could end the collective itself if they chose to. Samuel Grant felt sick as he completed his calculations. He was a gentleman who loved his work because it helped him understand the beauty of the universe. Now he was creating something that would reduce that beauty to fire and ash. But he thought about the children taken by slavers, the families torn apart, the colony burned to nothing. He finished his work. Admiral Cole oversaw the construction of the new fleet. The old exploration vessels were stripped down and rebuilt as warships. Factories that had produced consumer goods were converted to manufacture weapons. Engineers who had designed comfortable homes now designed armor and shields. The ships they created were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineers had looked at the laws of physics and decided they were merely suggestions. They found loopholes and exploited them. They created drives that moved faster than should be possible, weapons that hit harder than their size suggested, and shields that absorbed damage in ways that defied explanation. Captain Lavra Bennett was given command of a special division. Her assignment was psychological warfare. Humanity had spent centuries studying their own minds, understanding how fear and hope and anger worked. Now they would use that knowledge against their enemies. Lavra assembled a team of psychologists, artists, and communications experts. Their job was to break the enemy's will to fight before a single shot was fired. They would spread fear through propaganda. They would turn allies against each other with carefully crafted lies. They would make the collective doubt everything they believed about themselves. The transformation took 5 years. During that time, humanity showed no outward signs of what they were preparing. They continued to send diplomats to the collective. They continued to protest through official channels. They let their enemies believe that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Nathan Cole watched the final preparations from his command ship. The fleet that surrounded him was the most powerful force humanity had ever assembled. Each vessel was crewed by men and women who understood exactly what they were fighting for. They carried photographs of loved ones who had been taken or killed. They whispered the names of colonies that had been destroyed. His executive officer, Commander Rachel Dunn, approached him with a status report. "All ships report ready, Admiral. The fleet awaits your orders." Nathan Cole nodded slowly. He thought about his wife and daughters. He thought about the peaceful life they had tried to build. He thought about how hard humanity had worked to become something better than their ancestors. "The collective believes we are weak," he said quietly. "They believe that because we chose peace, we are incapable of war. They are about to learn the truth." He turned to face his bridge crew. These were people he had served with for years, people he trusted with his life. He saw determination in their eyes and something else. Something that their ancestors would have recognized immediately. Humanity was awake. And the galaxy was not ready for what that meant. "Begin the operation," Admiral Cole ordered. Show them what happens when you push humanity too far. The fleet moved as one, vanishing into faster-than-light travel. Their destination was the Krethian Empire. Their mission was rescue. Their method was annihilation. The universe had made its choice. Now it would face the consequences. The Galactic Collective surrendered within a year. Species that had ruled the stars for millions of years lowered their heads before humanity. Empires that had enslaved countless worlds sent ambassadors to beg for mercy. The ancient order that had governed the Milky Way for longer than humanity had existed collapsed like a house built on sand. Ambassador Daniel Price stood before the remnants of the Collective Council. He was older now, his hair completely white, his body worn by decades of stress and disappointment. But his eyes were still kind. His voice was still gentle. He was still the same man who had delivered humanity's first warning all those years ago. Beside him stood Admiral Nathan Cole. The man who had lost everything had become the symbol of humanity's wrath. He did not want to be there. He did not want to be a symbol of anything. He just wanted to rest. But the galaxy needed to see him. They needed to understand that humanity was not a faceless force of destruction. They were people. People who could love and lose and grieve. Fleet Commander Diana Hughes represented the military that had accomplished what everyone believed impossible. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had lost friends in the war. She had ordered attacks that killed millions. She carried the weight of every life that had ended because of her decisions. Dr. Patricia Cole stood with them as well. She had survived years of slavery. She had been rescued by the soldiers who stormed the Krethian worlds. She was the face of everyone who had been taken, everyone who had suffered, everyone who had waited for help that seemed like it would never come. The representatives of 1,000 species watched in silence as Daniel Price stepped forward to speak. "You had a choice," he said. His voice echoed through the great chamber where humanity had first been dismissed as irrelevant. "We came to you with open hands. We asked for nothing except fairness and respect. We warned you, as clearly as we knew how, about what would happen if you pushed us too far." He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. Some could not meet his gaze. Others stared at him with expressions that humans had learned to recognize as fear. We did not want this war. We did not want to become what we became. For 200 years, we had worked to build a civilization based on peace and cooperation. We were proud of what we had achieved. We believed we had evolved beyond the violence that had defined our history. His voice grew heavier. "You taught us that we were wrong. You taught us that kindness is seen as weakness. You taught us that mercy is an invitation for cruelty. You showed us that the only thing the galaxy respects is force." Admiral Cole stepped forward. His presence seemed to fill the chamber despite his silence. Everyone knew what he had done. Everyone knew what he had lost. He did not speak. He did not need to. Daniel Price continued. "Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We never did. We wanted to be friends. We wanted to explore the stars together, to share knowledge and culture, to build something greater than any single species could accomplish alone." He looked directly at the Valorian High Chancellor, who had been captured and brought here to face judgment. The crystalline being who had once laughed at humanity now trembled before them. "But you left us no choice. You killed our people. You took our children. You destroyed our colonies. You ignored our warnings and dismissed our protests. You treated us as livestock, as resources, as nothing. And so we showed you what nothing could do." Dr. Patricia Cole spoke next. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I spent 3 years as a slave. I watched people I loved die from exhaustion and despair. I saw children torn from their parents and sold across the galaxy. Every night, I prayed that someone would come. Every morning, I woke up to darkness. She looked at the assembled representatives. The humans who rescued me did not enjoy what they did. They did not celebrate their victories. They mourned every life they took, even the lives of their enemies. That is who we are. We are capable of terrible destruction, but we take no pleasure in it. Fleet Commander Diana Hughes delivered the terms of surrender. They were simple and clear. Slavery would be abolished throughout the galaxy. All species would be treated as equals under the law. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation, not conquest. Any species that violated these principles would face the consequences. We are not asking you to accept these terms, Diana said. We are telling you, this is how the galaxy will function from now on. This is the price of your survival. The representatives accepted. They had no choice. Humanity had demonstrated that resistance meant destruction. The new order would be built on respect, not because the galaxy had learned the value of kindness, but because they had learned the cost of cruelty. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. Species that had been enslaved were freed. Worlds that had been conquered were returned to their original inhabitants. Trade routes opened between civilizations that had never spoken to each other. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to heal. Humanity remained at the center of this new order, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They built stations throughout the galaxy where disputes could be resolved peacefully. They trained peacekeepers from hundreds of species. They shared their technology with anyone who asked, but they also kept their weapons ready. The fleet that had broken the collective still patrolled the stars. The Cascade devices were stored in hidden facilities, waiting. Humanity hoped they would never be needed again. They also knew better than to assume they would not be. Admiral Nathan Cole retired to a small house on Earth. He spent his days tending a garden, growing the same flowers his wife had loved. Sometimes visitors would come, admirers who wanted to thank him for what he had done. He always sent them away. He did not want thanks. He wanted his family back, and no amount of victory could give him the Ambassador Daniel Price lived long enough to see the first generation grow up in the new galaxy. Children who had never known slavery. Children who had never known war. Children who would inherit a universe where humans were respected. Where peace meant something. Where kindness was no longer seen as weakness. Before he died, he recorded one final message for future generations. It was played in schools across the galaxy, translated into every language that existed. Humanity will always extend a hand in friendship first, he said. We will always seek peace before war. We will always give you a chance to do the right thing. But if you hurt our people, if you take our children, if you mistake our desire for peace as an inability to wage war, then you will learn what we are truly capable of. And you will not enjoy the education. The galaxy remembered. The lesson had been burned into their collective memory. They knew now that the most dangerous thing in the universe was not the oldest civilization or the most advanced technology. It was a peaceful species that had been given a reason to fight. Humanity chose to be kind. They chose peace. They chose to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm, to love instead of hate. But they never forgot what they were capable of. And neither did anyone else. The stars had learned their lesson. They would not forget it. And somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, humanity watched over the galaxy they had conquered, not with armies and weapons, but with a simple truth that every species now understood. Do not make them angry. They had been warned.